Hello there, World of Tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm of course your host, Droodles, Blitz, and in today's video, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the Junu. This is a Tier 6 Japanese tech tree heavy tank, which will be introduced as part of the Type 71 line into World of Tanks Blitz. It's a very weird looking vehicle, but to be totally honest, it looks like another Tiger Tier 6 knockoff. We can just take a look at the vehicle's armor, and yeah, we can see it's pretty Tiger-esque looking with the 90mm gun, with the way the armor is angled on the front, although it's a little bit different because Tigers, as we know, usually have flat armor. Take a look at the Tiger 131, the Icebreaker, any version of the Tiger, even the Tier 7 one. There's no angles, it's just a flat slant of armor. This tank actually has cutouts like the IS-4 on the edge. It's got angled upper plate armor, even the lower plate is at a pretty steep angle, as you'll see down here in the bottom picture. So what that means is that the armor could be pretty effective on this vehicle. Now, I'm not 100% sure, because when we take a look at the armor, it says the hull's 135, which isn't anything amazing, but that could just be the upper plate, which it most likely is. So if the upper plate's 135, it'll be angled upwards to like 160 thick, which isn't anything crazy. But the real question is the lower plate 135 as well? Because the lower plate is angled much steeper than the upper plate, which means that it could be around 180 on the lower plate, but weaker on the upper plate. Wouldn't that be a weird armor profile to aim at? Now, I will say one thing is that angling this vehicle will not make your armor more effective because you have this cutout here. If you angle the tank, what's going to end up happening is that cutout's going to become flat towards your opponent and become weaker. So unless that's a really thick spot like the Tiger P, you really don't want to angle this vehicle because you're not going to get a lot of bounces. But what I can say is that 80mm of side armor will be very nice. It's not spaced, but 80mm will be plenty to side scrape at Tier 6s and 7s. It might not be a lot against Tier 8s, but good news is that you won't be playing Tier 8s unless you are fail tuning. So this vehicle should be pretty effective on the armor. I'm excited to see how it is when it comes out. Those tracks look very thick, and they'll be able to chunk a lot of shells if you do shoot them. But again, this just seems to me like a Tiger 1 knockoff at Tier 6. The turret armor, however, I will say seems very nice. It's 150mm base, which means that with the angling of the armor it has on the turret, that's probably around 200, maybe even more millimeters thick. So very solid on the turret. I do think there's weak spots. This tank doesn't really have a mantlet, so you can just probably shoot right around the gun and penetrate it. But apart from that and the weak spot of the hatch on the roof, the turret seems very well angled, which is very far off from most of the Tigers, which is just a flat pane of armor shoved on the front as a spaced mantlet. So I do think that this tank is, it's going to be a little bit different than the normal Tigers, but you'll see when we break into the gun statistics and literally everything else that it's pretty similar. And speaking of the gun, it's got 1960 damage per minute, it's got 145 standard pen, 195 premium pen, and 220 average damage. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's because it's basically the same gun that the Tiger 131 and all the other 90mm Tier 6s carry. So it's a pretty average gun, nothing crazy about it. The pen's okay. It's not like the Tier 5 where it's got a massive derp cannon, but it's not bad. It'll definitely be effective. And the thing I want to point out about this is it won't be a bad grind. Like, sure, it's kind of another Tiger knockoff, but I'm not mad at that because you have to grind down this tank to get to the Tier 7. And I'd much rather grind down a pretty solid vehicle that can do a good job than grind my way down an awful tank that's not good at all because it was new and interesting. So I'm happy with this tank the way it looks because it seems like it'll be fun, it'll be quick to grind, and you can make your way straight to the Tier 7. When we take a look at the aiming time though, ooh, that's not Tiger levels, that's 4.7 seconds, ooh, that's really bad. That's making me possibly think that this tank is going to have a more accurate, or not more accurate, but better armor profile than the Tigers, is because, well, with an aiming time of 4.7 seconds, that's really bad. Dispersion's pretty bad as well at 0.344. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's definitely nothing crazy. Gun depression, 7 degrees, all over the front, unlike the Tier 5, so that'll be good. I don't know if the rear will have 7 degrees, because you can see the rear does have a big box sticking out on the back, but over the front, you can see you will have plenty of gun depression, and you shouldn't have to worry about that, so that'll be nice to work any ridge lines with this vehicle. When we take a look at the top speed, it goes 40 forwards, not bad at all. It's got a pretty good power to weight of 13.7, and it averages a top speed of 27, so is that the fastest, but it is a heavy tank, and it's a pretty heavy tank at that, weighing in at 55 tons. Yeah, this is a big vehicle. You might think in the pictures that it looks kind of small. It's not. Do not be fooled by this. This tank is probably the same size, if not larger, than the Tiger 1. So that's really why I'm wondering how the armor's going to be, is because this tank is supposed to be like kind of a super heavy, because that's how all the Japanese heavies seem to be in Blitz. They're all really big, really heavy, and very strong on the frontal armor. So this tank could be very good on the frontal armor, but we're going to have to find out when it does get released into the game, as I don't have live armor models. All I have are base armor that I can read off a piece of paper for you, which doesn't really tell you anything. When we take a look at its traverse speed, it's got 33 degrees a second and a turret traverse speed of 29. Okay, not bad. This is the first tank that we've actually talked about on the whole tech tree that has very good traverse speed all around. The hull is fine, and the turret. 60 degrees a second will be plenty to deal with enemy opponents, and that's actually not too bad at all. Its traverse speed is bad though. At 12, you're gonna have to be very careful when using this vehicle, because if you put it in a position that you're going to have to get out of, which will happen. Let's say you pull out of cover and a black prince is in front of you, peppering you for 160 every 3 seconds. You need to back up. This tank only going at 12 in reverse, that's going to be a really bad time. That is one of the big downsides I've noticed about all the Japanese tanks, is they don't have great reverse speeds. Even the tier 10 only goes 15. And I know that's not bad, but if we compare it to vehicles like the 60TP, the AIM XM4, which are all very new fast heavies, they can go in reverse at 20. So I do think that these tanks are being balanced by the reverse speed a lot, because if you can't get out of the trouble you've put yourself in, that's a pretty big downside, isn't it? So there you go, 55 tons of that is a really, really heavy vehicle. Terrain crossing capacity is fine, and its engine power is 760 horsepower. So it's got a pretty beefy engine. It'll get up to speed. It'll take a while though. On hard terrain, which is roads, as you can see, it's got 92% terrain crossing capacity. It'll be fine. On medium terrain, it'll be okay at 79%, but water, ooh, do not drive this tank in the water. 50% is awful. That means your average speed's gonna go from 40 to 20 in this tank. Ooh, yeah, that's not gonna be very, very fun. Either way, this is the Juno. It's a tier 6 Japanese tech tree heavy. As I said, it'll be part of the new Japanese tech tree for the Type 71 introduced into the game, and this will be the vehicle you have to grind at tier 6. My overall review of this tank is it looks fine. It looks like a tier 6 Tiger, another one of them, which will be fine because you'll grind it. It won't be anything amazing. It'll be an okay tank. You'll be like, oh wow, I ground it and now I made my way to the tier 7. And that's all I really think about this vehicle. It's nothing crazy. It won't be anything to make you go insane grinding it. But that's it. I mean, once you get to the tier 7, that's when the line starts to get pretty funky. So I'll make a review on this tank when it officially comes out, so you guys can all know what it's like. And I'll especially make a review on the tier 5, because that one looks really, really interesting. But other than that, hopefully all of you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to see more information like this in the future, make sure to click that subscribe button down below. Asen is my moderator, and he gets this information out extremely ripe and crispy early. I don't even know how he does it sometimes, but thank you very much, Asen, for getting this information out early. And yeah, I'll keep you guys postponed on more information in the future. Bye-bye.